What do you need? May your blades never go. Loktar. Say, what do you need? For the Horde.
That's still recharging. That's still recharging. That's still recharging. Shaman. I can't carry any more. Inventory is full. That's recharging.
Blood and thunder, go forth to victory. Strength, so. Go with honor. Strength and honor. Down. What do you need? Strength. you doing, man?
How are you?
Someone call me the doctor?
Come get the wood. How are you? Good to meet you.
Hey there. Stay away from the voodoo. It's too far away.
Stay away from
Come get wet. How you doing, man? Airy man. Spirit of
That's to recharge in. That spell isn't ready yet. That's to recharge in. It's too far away.
stockholders that burn.
Yeah. The stock
Yeah.
market.
Customer.
I don't think that's accurate, because if a publisher is putting out crap games, they may, if it's a large and diverse enough of a portfolio of games, yes, they can withstand short-term shortfalls, and yes, there is some degree of, like, some games are just going to have an automatic, like a long-running franchise will have a certain amount of loyalty even as quality slips. But you were kind of going one extra step as to say, the only thing that matters is the...
You are referring to something where I repeatedly said I was generalizing and being reductive. So, there's nuance to it that I was like, I'm avoiding the nuance to make the point. Yes, it is further than that, but, like, where EA specifically is concerned, I genuinely believe their customer, and this is having spoken to people who left EA. I think I spoke to maybe 7 of them before I made my first video about their press conference. Was that their customer, even with their conferences, is the shareholders, investors, stock market, not actually the gamers. So when people criticize
especially with their conferences, right?
Well, yeah, when people
sure.
criticize their press conferences, which is what sparked me like doing a bunch of investigation into that specifically, I reached out to people and was like, why do gamers hate your press conferences so much? And they were like, it's because it's not actually for them. It's part of the bells and whistles of E3, but it's actually for the investors. That's why we don't care that you don't like them, because you're going to buy FIFA and you're going to spend money on Ultimate Team anyway, which is true.
Well, okay, that's a fair point. That I think, if you're talking specifically about who's the audience of a conference, that I don't actually disagree with you there. It's
Right, I was going to say, what's wrong
now.
with that? Like, that's honestly what the same thing that Apple does. That's for their shareholders. That's for when you're that
But the
large.
broader point is,
Go ahead.
yeah. No, I interrupted you. Sorry, I was going to say the broader point of like that publicly owned company's primary customer is the shareholders. That is true. Like, ultimately, your shareholders will judge you based on your profitability, and one of the factors on your profitability will be if the audience is into what you're doing. But, like, yeah, you're not selling games, you're selling stock at that scale.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right?
I just don't think so, because your stock will not have value unless the games themselves have value.
So while that is true, generally
Right.
things being negatively received from, following patterns of this, it doesn't tend to have a huge influence on the stock market, and has a little bit more recently, and there are dips here and there. It did with Cyberpunk. But for the most part, because gamers pre-order things and buy them day one without waiting for reviews so consistently, it doesn't really matter if they get poor reviews or even poorly received, because they've already bought them in the millions 6 months before they even came out.
But that.
Also,
hold on. I would like to
crucially,
know, just quickly, I would like to know what is, without having earnings reports and information that you're privy to as only a shareholder, unless you are a shareholder and you are privy to those things, what information is supporting that? I wouldn't say notion, but that's an indictment. So, like, what, besides just saying this is what I've heard or this is what I've found out, it's like you have to be able to.
I mean,
there's people that study the stock market. So how have you?
So, like,
the stock goes up. Sorry,
it's just how businesses function. Is if you're a publicly traded company, that is what you care about. But B, I have interviewed like several first-hand sources about this particular thing, like loads of them. I would say I've done a fair amount of research into it before saying anything super definitive about it. That was the thing that I did at IGN.
I've got some great proof. I've got some great external proof. Of
Sure.
this. If you want to see the stock, if you want to see EA make money, and sorry, let's generalize it. I don't want to talk about EA specifically.
Yeah,
if you want to
that's
see a third-party publisher make money, don't look for the game launch. Look for the purchase of the company that does the thing that the stock market thinks has value. That's when their stock's going to jump up. It's not to do necessarily selling FIFA. Great, it's successful. That's awesome. But the stock doesn't shift much. It shifts in a predictable fashion. But let's I'll use EA as an
Pokemon Go is a
example.
really good
when
example
EA
of that.
buys
If you look at Nintendo stocks when
Go's a great
Pokemon Go was
example.
announced, skyrocket. Not when it came out.
PopCap. This is not that these companies. So basically, the stock market wants companies to show growth and growth. Well, crucially, they want to show growth potential. They want to show that this company is going to make more money over time, and that's the thing. So when an E3 is a good illustration of this, but it's generalized. The press conference at E3 is trying to show, hey guys, we're going to grow in the next few years. We are going to dominate this market. We have these IPs. We're moving into, every time they announce a mobile game at E3, right? That's specifically to demonstrate to the stock market that they are moving in the area where popularity is and money is. It's one of the reasons we talked about Fortnite the other day and its kind of impact on aesthetics. That is partially down to, well, largely is down to the fact that consumers have shown an interest in that aesthetic, but it's also for all the people who own stock in the companies making those cartoony games that know that games that sell well look like Fortnite right now. So it's kind of, you're playing to that crowd with those choices as well, and that's an intentional thing. And as a game developer, I obviously we're not publicly traded, but we certainly work with publicly traded companies, and we certainly pitch to publicly traded companies. Of course, that factors in, and understanding that they have to look good to their shareholders is ultimately, I'm almost, in a weird way, if I'm trying to partner up with a publicly traded company, my customer is their shareholder, right? I'm kind of pitching through them at their shareholder. I need to demonstrate to the person I'm pitching to that the thing I'm pitching to them is going to appeal to that shareholder as much as I'm trying to pitch they will find a customer. It's about how you look and appear. Look at
it's predicated
American
on the idea.
businessmen who've had amazing careers and become president based on perception, not on literal bank account. You know, there's a trade there. There's a trade.
But the belief in you, the shareholder downstream of the publicly traded company that you're pitching to, if they roll that dice, and decide to make a deal with you, it is predicated on the idea that your game will sell. So it's like, at the end of the day, the gamers are still the customers.
Not necessarily, like, genuinely, and I'm not going to talk about specific deals or anything, but like, it's also about the perception. It's also about what when what's a good example of this? Look at something like, and back in the day, obviously they've now been bought and sold, but like Fox Searchlight, was making these indie movies that were specifically designed to win awards, right? Or to be up and coming, find new talent, all of this stuff. They were not there to make money, they were there to look good. And that appeal was made to like enhance the brand and to the shareholders ultimately, and to do that. So no, sometimes you're not even there to make money, you're there to create an illusion of success.
That is a fair point, actually. But it must be taken in the context of Fox's meanwhile making X-Men and Alien and Simpsons episodes and things that were designed to essentially float those Fox Searchlight projects. Did I lose
Mike Bethel is receiving
I just lost
breaking
all
news
of Austin's audio, but I'm sure everything he said was absolutely correct, and I agree with it completely.
I apologize, Austin. I'm hearing now that the president is...
Yeah, I
do have a question. I do have a question because before we continue,
no.
Poor Mike has been very off mic today.
Sure. I don't think he can
I'm
hear us right now.
observing this conversation, and I don't have a position, simply because I'm enjoying the information and I'm processing the information. I do hear a lot of intention that is impossible to intuit. I'm hearing what they wanted and what they were trying to project and what was important to them.
You mean you're hearing projection of intention without demonstration?
True. Like I'm hearing an announcement or a projection.
Alana's just said that like the people who work there think this, right? So if anyone's projecting, it's the people who are like in senior roles of publishers are making that presumption.
If there's but again there's like. President of Fox comes out and says that we want to create Fox Searchlight Pictures so that we can make our shareholders happy, so that we look like we win awards. And if that's true, it's like, well, that's a pretty clear-cut thing. I'm not privy to this. I am curious because there is a lot of talking. Like Mike, you're specifically talking about, hey, as a game developer, I've been privy to these conversations, I've been privy to these rooms, so I understand that this is the trend because we. For right or for wrong, we base our company's kind of vision casting up based upon this. But I do want to know, Alana, do you feel and I say this with all sincerity because I genuinely do want to understand, do you feel a moral obligation to say that as a disclaimer that you are not an economist or someone who provides financial planning or do you know what I mean? Because there's a lot
she's
of
reporting on other people's opinions.
Because
she's not stating that as her own advice. She's saying that these
not
people
advice,
think
but you are saying this is the way that these things function. This is the reason why. This is how this happens. This is the economics of video games.
What I say when I've spoken about this, and I've spoken about it a couple of times, is generally like, do not listen. Listen to me where it comes to like what stocks you should buy in. I'm not a person you should listen to about that kind of thing as someone who does not have experience in that. But if I'm reporting something that I spent effectively like a full 2 years making sure that I focused on as a journalist, no, because I'm just telling you what I've learned as a journalist.
But I hear that. I guess what I'm asking is, you're making a very broad statement about how the economics of the stock market work, and that's a very like.
Actually, I
economist-
wouldn't.
I think my statement is pretty
to be clear,
standard.
Oh, hold on,
She's
guys.
saying-
Hold on. This isn't an attack. I'm asking
I'm not taking it as one
a
at all.
question.
No, you're fine. Look, I feel like the way that the stock market works, I feel like this is a very easy thing to understand, and I'm not making a broad statement. I feel like what I'm saying is like very standard information, is that if you're a publicly traded company, you try to make money from the stock market. Like, I feel like that's just like I would think anyone who works in that field would be like, well, I mean, reductive, and, you know, there's like a lot of qualifiers there, but I mean, yeah, that's true. I don't feel like I'm saying something that is in any way like hidden from anyone. It's just something that I think gamers don't think
again,
about.
there was a lot of like, there's a lot of technical and very specific jargon and statements that were being made, and I genuinely want to know, because I feel like I learn more about you, and I learn more about kind of like your worldview, and I could probably become more informed
I don't feel
myself
like I'm being
about
very
it.
technical. I think if someone who were an economist would be like, you were so fucking broad just now, and I'd be like, yeah. Like, I don't know.
And in
think
your
there's a-
defense,
yeah.
you do say that in the video that I'm mentioning that you published the other day. I only took issue with the idea, and I could be wrong also. I'm certainly no expert. I have zero invested in the stock market. It is not part of my day-to-day life in any way. But I have spent a little bit of time learning the underlying mechanisms, and it really is, for how complex these markets and the various ways that they are connected to each other can get. It is actually fundamentally simple at its heart, because if you are a publicly traded publisher, part of the reason to have a diverse offering of games, from mobile games to boutique-y indies that you're shepherding, to giant, massive games of service, to big AAA premium games. The whole point of that is that if one or even several of those fail in succession, your company can stand on its feet. And if your stock market is not adversely affected, your stock value is not adversely affected by a failure of a game, it's because of shareholder belief that this one failure is not because of a systemic issue in your ability to make good games. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, the gamer is still the ultimate assigner of value, because at the end of the day, if they stop coming, if they stop buying your games, the stock market will punish the company.
Yeah, I don't disagree with
But
you.
McDonald's isn't. Yeah,
Sorry,
Lana, please.
keep buying them. So like the fact that, like, you know,
you say that, but it's because people like them. Like, that's the thing.
But that's the part that, like, is kind of, I'm not even talking about it in a like genuine one-to-one conversation way. Like, it's spoken about in like a, why does Activision keep making this Call of Duty game that I hate every year, that I will talk about how much I hate every year? Like, they have to listen to me, but then you buy it every single year. Like, that's kind of more the point that I'm making, is that, like, the words you're screaming on the internet don't matter, because you are all still buying the thing, and it is still satisfying the stock market regardless.
Well, that's
so that you aren't the customer in terms of do what I want. You are the customer in terms of you're gonna keep buying it anyway.
I would
I think
say
there's an
then that
important thing
the
that maybe is getting
shareholders
missed.
are
Oh,
the
go on.
boss. They're not the customer. They're the ones that are actually making the decisions.
So I think let me try a semantic change to make this maybe make a bit more because I think so. What Alana's saying is, sorry, what I think Alana's saying. Alana can say what she's actually saying. My read of what Alana's saying is, I think you're taking important to mean like most special or most wonderful. Ultimately, I think it means ultimate. The ultimate customer of a publisher or any publicly traded company, the ultimate customer is the shareholder. The ultimately, you're trying to convince that customer via metrics. And Austin said a very important thing. He said the word belief, which is entirely core. There's a really, here we go, book recommendation.
Go.
Sapiens.
Yeah, dude. I've got it right over there.
Specifically draws a line between
only Mike
kind
is
of
allowed to
religion
reference
and-
books in the back of the frame.
Yeah, sorry, no more bookcase. Trademark. Sapiens references basically draws a direct line between like ancient religion and the stock market and business in general. Contracts don't exist. Contracts aren't a real thing. We all just agree that they exist and therefore they do. Like ultimately, there's no magical value to a contract unless you live in a society that enforces and responds to that belief. And stocks, you live in a society. There you go. Got it in. But stocks are the same. It's a belief-based system. Ultimately, your value as a company, all currency is.
Gold is a lie agreed upon, right?
So your ultimate customer, your final customer, the customer that ultimately decides how much value your company has, is the stock market. In order to convince them that
Is the
you have
shareholder, not the
value-
stock market.
Sorry, apologies. You're absolutely right. The shareholder, although the stock market in general, that's your ultimate customer. The customer who buys the game, who is massively important, obviously, for the exactly reasons Austin's saying, is essentially, on some level, the metric which drives your share value. Is how successful you are at selling things defines that, but ultimately the thing you're selling is shares, and therefore your final customer, your ultimate customer, is the
That's my
shareholder.
point, yes.
I mean, maybe I'm getting tripped up on the semantics of it, but it just seems
It's-
that the shareholder
No,
will
it exists
leave.
entirely in semantics.
Yeah,
Like that's the brilliance of all of these
this
things.
has
Is
been
it's all
extremely
semantics.
reductive and semantic, yes.
I just don't see why the shareholders will jump ship if the gamers stop coming. That at the end of the day, that is just an axiomatic fact.
That's correct.
So they are the ultimate. They are the end destination.
They're the end of the line.
Yeah, the players.
The point that I'm
No.
trying to make is,
Because the players have the final say is my point.
but they aren't the final matter. Like, you're doing things for players to buy things, sure, but it's really just to please the stock market. You don't put microtransactions in a game because players want it. You
I don't
know
think
the
that's-
online rhetoric that they don't. You
But-
put them
but
in there
you're-
for the stock market.
But that's
and gamers
also-
are like, why won't you listen to us? We hate them. They're like, well, because it's not for you. Clearly.
Think of it this way, Austin. The people who define how much money is in my company's bank account is players, right? Like ultimately, like if they buy the game, I get money. That's how it works. But the second that the company in my bank account is defined by how much shares cost, which is defined by how many people are buying my shares versus how many people are selling my shares, then the person who defines what's in my bank account is the shareholders.
But that's not true because your revenue is still overwhelmingly the players. Like
But my revenue isn't the value of my company.
Well, okay, true, yes, but that I don't see how that undermines my quibble here. And the funny thing is that I'm basically 95% in agreement with you. It just feels like you're putting the shareholder in a position of primacy in the importance of like the executives of the publicly traded company over the player. And I feel like any company that plans to survive other than some kind of short-term hype cannot put their actual customer below their shareholder.
Well, to be clear, this isn't about how much we like the customer or how much we think that these publishers. If you go to any major publisher, the people actually making the decisions, by and large, are people who like video games, like at the mid to low level. At the highest levels, maybe that kind of starts to fade away a little bit, but like, no one's saying that people don't care about the customers. Of course they do. No one gets into games to make money exclusively because there's many, many more profitable ways to make money than making video games. But yeah, I think this is a semantic argument, to be honest. I think most of the audience is probably just like wanting us to stop.
This was such a great episode until the very last second. Yeah,
I do feel like the stock market is more important than the customer to a business in capitalism overall. However, I think, unless I edited it out, I did say in that video as well that, like, on the dev level, the people who are making creative decisions definitely care about the
You
players.
did say that, yeah. Oh, of course, yeah.
It's not all of them. It's definitely like
I'd even say like the producer level,
Yeah.
at the production, like the people who are involved.
the studios.
in the decisions
I think
behind
care.
games.
The publishers are the ones that feel differently.
There's a lot of broad sweeping
Yes,
statements
correct.
that are
The important note is also, which I feel like I also probably mentioned, but people still ask, is this doesn't necessarily apply to first parties. Because they're trying to sell hardware as well. So it's like an entirely different ballgame for the people who are trying to sell hardware. That's a whole other approach to a business. They can do very, very, very different things.
I would always compare. Like, look, an easy example would be look at a company like Yahoo. You know, if their stock price today is a pale reflection of what it once was a couple of decades ago. And if they had basically kept their customer base and they had done a lot of things differently and hadn't lost their market share to Google and whomever else, then their stock market value would not have declined.
I 100% agree with yours in that it matters that you have to keep players.
Human users are ultimately what drove people to sell off their shares of Yahoo, and thus its value went down. It just strikes me as very simple, and how would that be different for EA if or like look at Activision, if Call of Duty stops selling like gangbusters, and I saw that Cold War they said was the highest selling of all Call of Duties, like if they weren't continuing to make games that people in droves were willing to buy, then they would see the same decline. It's just not instantaneous feedback.
I would also ask a question that you made a statement where you said that the goal is to not sell, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but the goal is not to sell video games, but it is to sell shares. Is that correct?
Well, for your shares to have higher value.
There's a huge difference, though, between that.
There's a huge difference. Again, that's a massive simplification.
Because I don't necessarily want to sell if I had a company, I wouldn't want to sell multiple shares because now I have multiple shareholders and I have less control, less equity in my company. But
we're talking about publicly
even a publicly traded company, it's not so much about how many shares you have sold, it is the value of that share. So it's not about I want to share.
You want the shares to sell because that will increase their value. You might be wanting. I'm not saying
that's not true.
Well, no, I think you're misunderstanding where I'm coming from. I'm not saying that I, as the person who owns the company, want to sell more shares. I'm saying I want other people to be selling my shares back and forth to increase the value. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, I understood.
Yeah, it's between others. It's not for. I don't want to deprecate my value, obviously, in that way.
Right, but
I guess that's
the value of the share will also, the scarcity of that share will also determine the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not in the sense of you never want to like have the price of a game go up. Right, so there's a significant difference, and I think comparing shareholders to customers and shares to copies of games is just it's a totally, you say it's a different game if it's hardware, it's a totally different game. The shareholder is ultimately the boss. I believe that to be true because there's no one that's ever in charge, and ultimately it's this snake eating its own tail. Because the shareholder's at the top of the chain according to the shareholder, but the customer's is at the top of the chain according to the customer, and the dev is at the top of the chain. No, the dev never feels like at the top of the chain.
Can I interest you in socialism?
So look, all of these on paper are great. All of them. The problem is Alana made a statement at the very beginning: is humans have bias. And that's true, and that's ultimately, if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat first. Or if I think
the only place me and Alana are disagreeing with you guys is that
I don't think we're disagreeing necessarily.
a certain kind of like big corp. If you're a big company, what's the thing they say about the internet, that if you're not paying for it, then you're not the customer.
You are right. Yeah.
Instagram is free because they sell your data and ads.
And you know what? If you're only paying, to an extent, if you're only paying $60 a year for a video game, you're not the customer, you're the product. You're the proof of that product success.
That's
and
interesting.
A financial center for the company rather than, and individually, you're absolutely right. If the entire world decided they didn't want to play Call of Duty, that would have an enormous effect. But the entire world's not going to decide that.
But the reason is
point I keep
because
trying
it's
to
a good game. That's
But
all I
they
keep
saying
coming back on.
it's not. So I like that.
Who's the
one,
they though? That,
yeah.
like,
So this is the one part that I like. I feel like that I've focused on that. I maybe haven't expressed well enough. Is that I'm very specifically like trying to explain something to people who feel like they keep complaining about something, keep being like, why do you keep announcing release dates too early? Why do you keep doing this? Like, why is Call of Duty doing this thing that I don't like every year? And they're like, why won't they listen to us? It's because you can say that all you want, but for as long as you keep buying the game, which they keep doing, it doesn't matter to them. Like, you don't matter where that is concerned as long as you keep buying the thing. Because it's a publicly traded company. It's a lot bigger than your feedback. So I am
Their
trying to like
share value.
yeah.
Their share value goes up more from the announcement probably than the sale in most cases. So that's why
I'd
they
love to be able
announce
to
early.
track that because I remember specifically we knew when they were going to drop new hardware, and I went to my
It definitely happened with Pokemon Go. When it was announced.
Yeah, I was gonna say is like, will there be any financial gain if I were to buy stock before I know this thing's gonna hit, like Call of Duty's gonna hit or whatever?
Well, that
new
would be
hardware's
insider
gonna hit?
trading.
No.
I had to
Technically,
sign
maybe
a thing
not.
saying that I would not
Is
buy
it?
stocks in Nintendo / Pokemon.
You're,
when I
again,
knew
you're
about
making
Pokemon
a
Go
lot
early.
of broad statements.
Well, yes, but yes, this is broad.
So the person that has gone to school specifically for this and it is accredited and licensed to be able to sell stocks told me that it wasn't. So it wasn't insider trading. However, the point of it was saying that it wouldn't make a difference. He was like, you need to be way down the line. It's not just because this thing is about to go, it launches on the 11th or whatever, or it's announced on this date or whatever. That's not when you buy the stock. That's he goes, you're so
Like
far.
5 years ago. Right?
Yeah. So
it's because as Mike pointed out, or one of you, I think it was Mike, that
We're interchangeable.
the stock prices are entirely about perception of value. I mean, that's what that's what all price is in all of humanity.
did we not learn anything from GameStop? I mean, shit.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah. It's all an illusion.
All I'll say, well, it's not. It's just created
it's
by
very
people.
tangible and real. It's just a lie agreed upon. Our paper, the cash
There
that
you
I
go.
have.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting a lie agreed
Yeah.
upon.
I
Yeah.
have
The-
Bitcoin.
The thing
Do you?
Yeah.
You're the
tons.
one.
It's amazing.
the
Lowest of 20 days.
only Alana, just now a moment ago when you were explaining why you were explaining this, you kind of applied monolithic attributes to a heterogeneous group because you said we complain about this, yet why do they keep doing it? And I think the reason for that, correct me if you disagree, is because the people who go online and say, why are they doing these release dates? Why are they giving us these games? You are not wrong to say that this isn't for you. It's because the 20 million other people who go and buy the game aren't making those complaints. It's basically the 1% Twitter mob says this, but 99% of customers do something different.
Well, it's better than that, right? It's that not only are they also buying it, but also you've seen the meme, right? Of it was years ago, the Call of Duty, we're not buying Call of Duty Steam group, and on launch day they're all playing Call of Duty.
So yeah, Austin, you are right that it is all of the other gamers who still buy the thing that contribute to that. But like, it's that my point of saying that is directed at those very specific people who are like, why do they do this? Gamers don't want it. And yes, it is monolithic, like that. Not, I always feel like the amount of gamers who actually even know who EA are necessarily,
Right.
like really
Exactly.
know what they do when they're a
Here?
FIFA player.
Here?
Is like probably not that big. Like, I don't know how many people who play video games are like super into video games. Like the amount of people who played The Last of Us Part 2 and never even heard of the leaks is probably tremendously high. And like there are things on the internet that you feel are way bigger than they necessarily are. And I always feel like that's the thing with video games, is that we have to remember that not everyone actually knows absolutely everything. There are so many people who just buy video games and aren't on Twitter. Like, that's a huge part of it. But it is essentially just something that I'm directing very specifically to people who say we, the gamers, all of us, millions of us, aren't being listened to. Why don't they care? Why did they announce a release date? And the point is, release dates, like, which was the point of that video, specifically, are often dictated by marketing teams and shareholders rather than to tell
you.
games.
Is that inherently a bad thing? I'm just trying to understand for you. Is that are you making just like an observation without having any kind of position on it, or you're saying
I feel like
the
I'm
customer
trying.
is the shareholder, and I feel that is bad?
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to give any opinion on it whatsoever. I think it is bad, but I that's also very, very late. I've not tried to give any opinion on it at all, just to be like, this is an observation. Yeah, I'm not trying to put any negative connotation in there with that conversation at all.
Do you feel that the connotation of the bias is inherent, though, because you're...
Sure, but I'm not pushing
Time
it.
is money, friend.
I'm not trying to do that.
Be good.
Yeah.
Why is it bad? Just so I understand.
Well, if I'm saying that I'm trying to just give an observation and not give a negative connotation, it's because I'm trying not to do that.
Why?
I would
But you
prefer
don't
not
have
to.
an obligation to anybody now. You did this for something for IGN, right? So, but why?
Well,
why do you
generally, I would
care?
think that creatives being pressured by a stock market, especially in the case of Cyberpunk, if that game had been given more time, they could have realized a lot of the things that they promised. They could have polished a lot of things. The devs at the studio had specifically said that they, wanted to do things differently, but the upper management essentially made the game come out. Like that's an example of why I think it's bad, is that the creatives are not being listened to and releasing the product that they wanted. And I think that sucks.
Launch dates are affected by margin calls and quarterly reports and stuff like that. Yeah, I get that.
That's
Where your financial year is, all that jazz.
CDPR is actually a pretty good example of what I was saying, where that, in contrast to an EA, they are effectively a single game studio. It's like if Cyberpunk crashes and burns, their stock value is going to take a massive hit.
Interestingly, game still sold incredibly well. Like very, very
I don't
well.
doubt that. Same thing Last of Us, right?
Even after the returns, sold very well, but their stocks did go down.
Because of belief.
Yep, the belief went down. And I think that...
But crucially, not the belief in the gamers, although that influenced it, but the belief in the shareholders needs to go down in order for it to make a difference, not how much money people actually spend.
But
Yeah,
that
'cause they
strikes
still
me.
sold very well.
That strikes me as
Are
just.
shareholders the ones that
I mean,
actually
that
own
strikes
it versus people that are trading in it?
Well, so the stock value would go down if enough shareholders were selling off their stock.
Okay, gotcha.
Again, very simplified, but like that would be you'd be losing the faith of shareholders if your stock went down in value. But there's also a million other things, so I'm not going to completely commit to that statement because, as you say, it's very complicated. But like that would be the presumption I would be going in with. That yes, they'd lost the faith of a lot of shareholders for the stock to go
I don't
down.
see what's bad about that.
CDPR is a publicly traded company?
Yeah.
Yeah, now, I don't see what's bad about that, because if a company bungles a
Positive.
release, then
I think it's a positive.
yeah, like they should be, like, as much as I love the people that I know there, and as much as I know that the development, the 800 some odd developers worked their ass off and were just in the shittiest situation, my heart goes out to them. Like, it sends a strong message to management if you're going to make a game this way and it comes out and it has all these problems. Like, I, as a shareholder, am like, thank you very much, goodbye.
I had a
That
conversation
seems like
with
that's
someone at a third-party publisher that was part of why I wanted to make that video, who very specifically said that they felt like the situation with Cyberpunk and the effects on the stock market would give them a better case to their publisher going forward, and that they were really happy that they had it in stone now, that they could present that to their publisher and be like, see, this stuff maybe does matter. Can we delay our game if we need to? And that was like a really pointed thing that I was like, oh shit, you actually have
Yeah,
those
that's-
conversations
that
with
could
your
bring about
great
publishers. Oh my
change.
god.
I'm
yeah,
also
that's the
wondering,
system working.
because you brought up the fact that a lot of people are just kind of like, all I know is video games, right? They're not necessarily, I'm big gamers, I really believe in this industry. They're just like, it's a commodity to them. They understand that video games are a place to be investing in. That's why they buy that stock. I was interested because I didn't realize that CD Projekt was a publicly traded company. That was surprising to me. But it said by September 17th, it was the largest publicly traded video game company in Poland, making it the largest video game industry company in Europe, ahead of Ubisoft. So if you become the largest of something, are you not going to maybe suffer as the industry goes? Well, so let's say that Ubisoft has a shit year or whatever, and their sales go down, their stock goes down. Does rising tide float and therefore sink all boats if you're the largest?
I would
That's
think
where we're
that,
outside
that
of my skill
Yeah, I don't
set.
know.
Like, I definitely don't know the.
Yeah,
the
It's gonna be
Same.
like if tech stocks go down,
Intuitively-
all tech stocks go down. It's not just one specific company.
Definitely happens
suspect
with
that they're-
bitcoins. Once one of them
I
goes
think
up
that
there.
All
there's-
cryptocurrency went down, right?
Yeah.
Can't cast that yet. Not steam charge in. Nice.
There's multiple types of investors, obviously, because investors are just people. There's as many types of investors as there are human beings in the markets. And I think that there are some that, like you said, they're going to go, I should be in video games. That's making a lot of money. And they're not like researching. They don't know the difference between how Epic is running Fortnite versus administering the Epic Store, and how, like
I have no idea what I'm
2K
invested
and
in.
this and that. Yeah, they're just like, some financial advisor said, well, we're going to pick up some video game stocks, and then they go, oh, well, there's some bumps in the road. We should maybe get out of video games. That's going to be one type of investor, and another type of investor is going to be someone like us who knows a lot about these individual companies, and maybe far more. They know who's the CEO, who was recently recruited to be the CFO of EA, and this and that, and they're like hard in on this stuff, and they still may not be even gamers, but they just understand this particular market. And I would think, yeah, the casual ones, if there's choppy waters, they're going to be like, I don't know about games. Maybe this isn't for me.
I'm sure that I own some kind of pharmaceutical stock. I have no interest or understanding of pharmaceuticals. That's because my profile says that I want to have this much growth by this much time, and so my guy goes, then we invest in this stock for right now, and I can move. But that's exactly what it's supposed to do. You just, wherever those crops are growing is where you're invested, where you're seated.
It's no different than folks, I mean, that those kind of aggregated overgeneralizations happen in every conceivable way. You could have people saying, I want to go live in X country right now because I believe in it, even if the country's undergoing unbelievable amounts of tumultuousness, if you get down into the nitty gritty, because there's still a broad perception of it being a good place to go, or vice versa, that there's, this one person is doing very, very well, but overall maybe a lot of people are bailing out. Like that's just symptomatic of just the complexity of life.
It's fair.
It doesn't.
And we
yeah,
have
it
been
doesn't.
extremely broad across the board. Yes. Things
Yeah,
are very complicated.
I do.
I understand what you're taking issue with,
I-
Austin, and I feel like maybe it's just coming from. My point is directed at explaining things to people who don't understand why did this company do this. That is.
But you can only explain it to
Where
a
I'm
certain
coming from.
extent very broadly without any nuance or any room for...
Yeah, and in a lot of
intentionally.
in defending you, it was like a 10-minute video. It was one of those. Here was the story. I was walking into Ralph's, and I was like, I'm going to be in here for like 10 minutes, and my YouTube notifications was like, here's a 10-minute video, and I was like, I'm going to listen to this while I'm at Ralph's. And if your video had been like 20 minutes long, I would have looked for a 10-minute
We've
video.
talked about it longer than the video.
We have.
was
Oh,
in
yeah.
length.
And everything that you're saying here, so either I don't disagree with was the end of that sentence. My summary, and then I will shut up, is that I possibly misunderstood your intent, and or possibly you were being broad and I just was projecting that I wanted you to be more specific, because my takeaway that I found eyebrow raising was the idea that all that matters to a publicly traded third-party publisher is their stock value, and that the quality of their games and the interest of players to buy those games essentially doesn't matter.
Did she say that wasn't? Did you say it was most? She said it was the most important customer, not the only customer, right?
Well, I just remember the sentence.
It was specifically
you are
in
not
regard
the
to
customer.
release
The
dates.
shareholder is the customer.
Yeah, it's specifically in regard to release dates. It was and like delaying them. It was very specific. That, yeah.
Fair point. Yeah, that to me, I may have missed the forest for the trees in the fact that I was
Don't
like
imagine
looking
so.
at bananas
It's
when
not-
you
not
said
that,
it.
Like I present
So-
anything perfectly, but like to Troy's point, yeah, it was extremely broad and
I'm gonna need you to
extremely
present
short.
things perfectly.
Well, because I want people to understand it. I don't want to make a 2-hour video that people aren't going to watch. So it's got to be like a short, concise,
Like
this
to the
one.
point
You
thing.
We've only
Why
got 10
not?
minutes. We're waiting in the store, otherwise Austin's going to move on. You've got to get him.
Doesn't work that way.
Out of the waters.
That's true. This was the topic because we didn't want to avoid being too
I
quick
feel
and
like
dirty
this
on the
podcast
networking
demonstrates
conversation.
that people. This podcast demonstrates that people will watch nonsense for an hour.
You also
Like, I
just
think this
demonstrated
is-
the exact same thing that the shareholders do.
What's that?
You made something that was palatable and easy to share for the people that you want, as opposed to what it could have been. You know what I mean?
I have no idea what you're saying.
Sure.
Well, I'm glad Alana understands.
Alana.exe has shut down.
No, actually, I thought Austin.exe has crashed.
No, I said sure. Like, yeah, I made something short. I
Yeah.
don't know how the stock market's doing that, but I definitely did make something intentionally short and to a point for people who've not heard the point before, yes.
For the record,
Something
even
I'm
if I found myself,
What's
even
happening?
for this, for
A
the
lot's happened to
record,
Troy. Troy is,
even if I
in
may
the
have,
zone.
even if I may have disagreed and or found it curious, and if that
I'm
curiosity
touching
was
you, Mike.
if that curiosity
I'm
was
making a connection, a human connection.
if that was based on a misunderstanding of your point, I'll have you know it was a fabulous
not.
accompaniment
I
to
don't
my
imagine I did it
looking.
perfectly.
No, it's a fabulous accompaniment to choosing baguette and bananas and the various things that it accompanied me.
I like
doing.
that way better than apples and oranges. Baguettes and bananas? Fuck yeah, I'm stealing that.
Damn it.
If there's one thing we take away from this conversation,
Yes.
it's baguettes.
That's going to be the title of this episode: baguettes,
Baguettes
and
and
bananas.
bananas.
Could split this one into two, though. That's, sometimes I think that maybe that's why.
If we're gonna split into two, I've got another 5 minutes.
So it's two completely different conversations. I don't know. We'll
It is two totally different conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that my fault. My
No,
fault.
I
Sorry about
appreciate
that. That
We
it
could-
really
I-
was.
I've got a 5-minute topic.
Is it?
Austin
Go.
DM'd someone the phrase "screw Mike," and they've sent me photographic evidence of it. Austin, do you care to comment on this?
There we go.
We're competing for a friend's extra PS5. That's
Really?
hilarious. He goes.
Screw Mike was Austin's take on this. Screw Mike.
I love that he screenshotted that. That's fantastic. I know who
Wait,
my
Austin, you don't
confidant
have
is.
a PS5?
No.
No.
Wow.
No.
So yeah, that was the funny thing, and neither does Mike. And I saw Mike tweet that earlier, and a friend of mine messages me and goes, "So Mike's trustworthy, right? Should I send him my PS5?" And I went, "What? No, I want one. To hell with him." And I love
do
that
think
it's all
interesting.
it's all public
I'll bring
record
up
now.
something. I do think it's interesting. This is one thing I wanted to get into with
So
with,
funny. I am so calling him after this.
the state of play the other day was that it seemed like it was really showing off the hardware, which seemed a little unfair because
a little bit cruel.
yeah, it's like you can't. It showing off the hardware is great, but either you're making the people who've bought one feel better about it, but you can't sell any more. So it's not like you have to you really should go out and buy a PS5 right now. Everyone's like, I know, and they're trying to. So that's why I didn't understand them doing it. Even shareholders and customers alike, I'm like,
That's a
You
long-term
can't-
thing. Like when I got sponsored by
I agree.
Nvidia to get they gave me a 3080, and people were like, "Why would they do this when I could buy one? Do they not want customers?" And it's like, well, it's marketing allocation, so that they're giving one for the long-term market, so that when you can get one, you'll still buy one. But that's all been eaten up by Bitcoin too. Full circle.
how
Stop
did that
bugging.
get a big about Bitcoin?
It's the worst.
Oh.
It's the worst.
Did we not talk about that? About the guy who has like 12,000 GPUs to just generate Bitcoin every year? It's like
Who
a dude
looks
in
at the world
Vegas.
right now and goes, "We need to incentivize more power usage"?
Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Scum.
Power,
see if I
like
can link you the
actual,
article.
like
Electricity.
Yeah. Oh my God,
power
Troy!
or what?
I didn't realize this was a
Electricity.
topic. Yeah. So like, the amount of power that Bitcoin uses, just for mining, is like disgusting.
But I've heard that because of that, it's not really, it's barely, if
Data
at all,
mining?
profitable for the miner. Isn't that like? Aren't
That's-
there?
It is over
Welcome
time.
to capitalism. It only has to be ever so slightly profitable, right? It doesn't have to be
It takes
very
a while.
profitable. It has to
So
be.
there's a guy who is
it has to
crypto
be
mining with
tiny
78 GeForce RTX 3080 GPUs and makes about $150,000 a year.
Except, well, Mike, wait. You say welcome to capitalism. There will always be a greater incentive to things that have better margins because there's an opportunity cost of choosing A versus B. And if I only stand to make a tiny profit
Versus
doing A versus
state-run,
B, then
you
I
will make this
if
game.
you're-
That would
if
suck.
if you were right, then we wouldn't have any low profit industries.
no, it just means that the opportunity cost was acceptable. Like
Well-
people still do things because they have passion for them, and their ability to continue to do so is
I
predicated
don't think
on it
anyone's
being
passionate
profitable.
towards like I don't know what's a low margin. I'm trying to think of a low margin industry.
Well, restaurants.
Restaurants is something people are passionate about. No one's passionate about McDonald's though necessarily.
bullshit.
That's a tiny-
Did you
Every
see the
Friday night he
founder?
is.
Did you see the? It's true. Angela and I have nasty Fridays. That is literally like
Let me give you a better
WandaVision and Big
example,
Macs,
Austin.
and it's
I've eaten
disgusting.
so much McDonald's in the last 2 months. Did you see my
Let me
nugget?
give you what. Oh,
I got a giant nugget
I
pillow.
haven't had McDonald's in years.
I'm gonna let this conversation flow off of this.
No,
it's
get into it. I have one more minute. Go.
If you can make a cent, then there'll be people who pursue that as a business. Even if you have to spend $1 to make that cent, if you have to spend $10, $100, $1,000 to make that cent, someone will be doing it. What the profit motive does is it encourages efficient attempts to try and get 2 cents, but it doesn't prevent anyone from trying that. If there's a cent to be got, the system
Yeah,
encourages
well-
you to go and get that cent. You know.
I mean, I would say, okay, fine, but I think that the fact that if it costs you $1 to get that cent, the very same incentives would immediately say this is not working, and you will bail.
Again, like there's not many businesses like radio still exists as an industry. Like,
Because it's profitable.
Slightly, yeah, or growing apples, like stuff that like very low profit margin activities still do well. In I don't know what it's like in the US, but here supermarkets have massively drilled down the margin you can make. Basically, it's kind of to a de facto monopoly almost. Where if you're growing produce to be sold in supermarkets in the UK, the supermarkets are setting the price and they're obviously pushing that as low as they can. So these farmers are getting by on a tiny margin, and many, I'm sure, have left the industry and gone and done other things, as you say, Austin, but someone's still making apples. You know what I mean? Like, there will always be people who will chase that cent. And unfortunately, with Bitcoin, you're not creating anything of value. You're just using electricity to generate cash. And that's
Well,
gross.
and this is where, yeah,
Imagine
the
if
actual
it cost it cost $100 to make a 1 cent coin. Like, you wouldn't, like, it would be awful, wouldn't it? But but people would still do it. You know, sorry, it would cost $100 to make $100 and 1 cent coin. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, you have to make it back. But yeah,
The thing that
it's gross.
yeah, okay, so
No,
that,
Austin,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, that distinction you just made is a big part of what my pushback was, because you were basically describing a giant loss and calling it profit.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, no, I misspoke. But the point is, if someone so this guy's making $150,000 a year. Presumably what's actually happening is he's spending an enormous amount of money, spending a lot of money and then making much more money, and his margin is $150,000 a year. So how much electricity is he using to get to that 150,000? A terrifying amount, more than we could ever use. At least with most consumer use of electronics, it is to, travel, create value, go to work.